Hi there, I'm Kesh, the OBO photographer for Manitoba, and been meaning to do this for a while. Just wanted to put a little video together to help with the processing of your photos. Um, what I'm using currently right now is Lightroom 4. So we'll start out with importing all your photos into Lightroom. So you go to the Import tab, just pick your memory card that you have, and all your photos will come up on the screen. Select new photos so that you don't accidentally import duplicates or anything like that. Um, what I do is I have a separate hard drive that I use for all my photographs, and as you can see here it's labeled OBO, and then I always put each property into its own folder. So for this property it's 10 Prospect Road. Make sure you spell road correctly. And then I've also have some presets that I downloaded from On1 software, and they're the Lightroom 3 presets. They're free, and I find that their auto tone preset that you see up here under development settings kind of adjusts all the photos before we actually have to go into editing. So you can see all my photos here, including my Panoramix, are in there, and they're all going to get adjusted with the auto tone from On1 software. And then all we do is click import. Depending on the type of camera you're using, if you have USB 3 or USB 2, it'll determine how long it takes for you to import all your photos in. Very straightforward once it's all done in here. Just wait a second. So you see the photos pop up, and I use Lightroom because it's the quickest, I find. I was using Adobe CS6 before for my editing, and I found it was just taking a little too long for my liking. For everyone's different. However you process your photos, it's up to you. But I just find this is the most efficient for how I do my processing. So you see here, almost done. Using the D800, the file size in RAW is quite a bit larger than my old D300S, but here we go, all done. So now what I do is I've created a preset for corrections, so I'll select all my photos, then I go over here to Save Preset. I have my user preset, and this just does the lens correction, and I add some contrast to all my photos. So you see a little change, and then the next thing I'll do once that's done is I click the Develop tab. And here we go. First picture, basement. You can see that the lights are a little blown out here. You go up to your histogram and you can see where your hotspots are and if you have any shady areas. I also increased my vibrance by 20 and my contrast. That's all programmed into my auto preset, my user corrections, or my corrections preset, sorry. And I'll scroll down here. First thing I always do is I check if my photo's straight. And you can see, you can just match up the grid to your lines, and if you have to do any rotational corrections or horizontal corrections or even vertical corrections, you can adjust them from here. This one here looks pretty good. Lines are nice and straight. That could be one of the biggest issues with real estate photos is, the photo slightly tilted, or it just looks everything's askew. So make sure you correct your verticals, make sure you correct your rotation. If everything looks good, just leave it like that. So now I'll go up, once again, up to my histogram here. I noticed I had some hot spots. I'll turn down my highlights a bit to reduce those a bit. Something, you can almost go down to -100. And then if I see any dark areas like in here and I want to brighten them up just a touch, even though I don't have any black clipping, shadow clipping areas, I always like to brighten up my photos just a touch. So you can see a subtle change. Just make sure you don't go too far where you're clipping the highlights again. For this photo, I'm happy with it the way it is. So for organizing my photos, once I'm done a photo, I'll rate it a 5. So you just hit the number 5 and you're done. So for this one, you can see it's a little darker over here. the lighting in this basement wasn't the greatest. This light over here wasn't working. But once again, you want to check your hotspots. So they're not too bad though. You know, with any lights, you're gonna get some hotspots. But we did have quite a bit of shading, or shadowy areas there. So I'm just gonna turn down my highlights a little bit, and then as you see, my shadows for this one went up to 100. Once again, don't forget to check your verticals. And that one looks pretty good. Thankfully, that wallpaper has the straight lines, so it's easier to match up with the grid. So this one, I'm going to say is done. I'll rate this a 5. You don't need the photos to be magazine quality, you know. So don't spend 15-20 minutes on each photo editing and dodging and burning. Like if you're doing a very high-end listing, then you might want to spend a bit extra time, or if the realtor asks you for higher quality photo, like a magazine quality photo where you're going to do some extra post processing, to make sure you note that and you charge accordingly. So here, this bathroom, I shoot all my bathrooms in vertical. Reason being, if I took this in a horizontal format, you'd probably see the sink and this part of the shower and maybe the toilet lid, and you'd probably chop off the medicine cabinet. When I shoot them in vertical, unless you have a very large bathroom where you can shoot in horizontal, you know, I find this just gives you some perception, gives the potential buyers perception, and it just shows off the size of the bathroom. First thing I notice here is I've already got a bit of distortion and my verticals seem to be off. So we'll check rotation. I don't think there's anything there with rotation, but definitely verticals. So what I do is I start out with a 5 to start it out and see how that does. And you can see it straighten my lines pretty much here, but then over here I've got a bit of a rotational issue. So I'll do a -0.3 here, and you can see that pretty much fixed up my lines. So you just got to play with it, and you know, just make sure you use the grid to find the lines. Next here, got some major hot spots on the lighting. We'll bring that down a bit. You can see it balances out the photo a bit more, but we also have some shadowy areas. Not too bad. Just brighten up the shadows a touch, and we're done that photo. This line here, it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Might throw you off a little bit, but this could be because of the towel, so you can't see the straight line all the way through. But I'm happy with the way this photo is, and I'm going to rate it a 5. Next one, here's the office. A little bright. We can see hotspots in the lights as well. The auto tone preset from On One really helps balance things a little better, so you're not spending a lot of time editing afterwards. So I just bring down the lights a little. Let's go down here. And do I have a rotation issue? If we look at this cabinet, it seems like I'm a little bit rotated to the right. These lines, that could also be a bit of distortion. You know, that's one of the issues with using a wide angle lens. You do get some distortion. But looking at the lines on the wallpaper, you know, I'm going to go -0.3, see if that helps us out a bit. And it does. We can see this looks pretty straight now. It helps out the line over here on the cabinet. And I'm going to say we're done with this photo. So rated 5 and move on to the next one. This photo looks pretty good just the way it is. It's a little hot, so we'll cool it down a little bit. Bring down the highlights a little bit. And lines look good. Always check your lines. Never forget to check those, because once you upload them to your virtual tour, you can't really change it afterwards because the public's going to see it. But I'm happy with this one, and it's a done photo. Now here, you see this one's a little hot on the color side. So what I'm going to do is go to, on the side here, I've got my On One presets. I'm going to check the white balance, and it will tone it down for me a bit. And I like that, you know, the colors are more natural. You still got the warmth of the lighting. We still have some hot spots from the windows, so we'll bring those down a bit, and we get some detail back in the curtains. But we are getting a bit of shadow, a little darker. So for me, personally, I'm going to turn my shadows up a little bit. And then last thing, check your lines. Don't ever forget your lines. This one looks pretty good. Almost looks like I have a bit of vertical. I'm off in my vertical, so I'll just do a -3. And there we go. We can see the line here on the dresser straight now, and the line here on the nightstand is straight now. So I'm happy with that one. That's a number 5. Same thing here. Quickly adjust the white balance, cools it down a bit. Don't be afraid to play around with it too. If you find it's a little too cool for your liking, you know, go and play around with the slider here on the temperature. I'm just gonna look here, the highlights. Crank down my highlights a bit, and once again check the lines. And I will say that a lot of times, because that's something we as real estate photographers shouldn't be missing. So I noticed that it was a little askew at the door here, and things look much better. The picture, I think, was a little askew. I'm using that word a lot. Askew to begin with. If you notice it when you're in the room, adjust the photo. I know we're in and out of homes pretty quickly, so you might miss things like that. But just make sure all your verticals, like the door doesn't look like it's crooked, or the house looks like it's crooked. This bathroom, we can already see that it's a little warm, so I'm going to click my white balance. Cools it down a touch. You can always check, you know, the tone. You can see it in the preview here. I notice my lines are off already, quite drastically. So it looks like a vertical. So I might even go to a 7 on this one. And there we go. See, seems to straighten up the lines here. The mirror still looks a little off, so I think I might go to an 8. You can even watch your lines on the cabinet doors. And it's just trial and error. Play with it. Let's turn down the highlights a bit. Touch up the brightness here a bit with the shadows. As you notice, I barely ever play with exposure. But to each their own. You might adjust the exposure and then your highlights and shadows. This is just my preference. It's one of the bedrooms. Very bright windows. It was a very bright day today here. So I'll turn down my highlights all the way. I like my rooms to look a little warmer, so I won't cool this one off on the white balance. I will check my lines, and it looks pretty good. Another bathroom. This one I'm quite happy with. You know, exposure-wise, it looks pretty good. Once again, you know, the lights are a little blown out, but we can always bring those back so we get some more detail here. And this one, I think, is done. So it's taking me a little longer because I'm talking through it all and doing this video for you. This one here, we can see it's very bright through the windows, but I'll turn this down, see how it comes, see how it looks, and I like the way it's looking there. We don't have any blown out highlights anymore. The shadows look good. Lines, let's see. And the lines are good, so this one's a 5. Go to the dining room. Always try and make sure that when you're photographing a room, find a reference line in your viewfinder, and that way you can level your camera. If you have a level on your camera or a virtual horizon, you know, try and make use of that so that you're not doing as much post-processing. because every little thing you have to adjust takes time, and in the end it costs you money. Some of you might like spending a lot of time at your computer processing. I prefer getting things to look as good as possible in camera, so I'm not spending as much time in them. As you see here, I brought my highlights all the way down to bring back some of the detail in the window coverings. We still got nice exposure in here. This is all done with a single flash on camera, bounced behind me. You know, my power ratings vary from 1/8 to 1/4. Sometimes, depending on bright windows, I could move it up to a half power or full power. This home was shot, I think, completely at ISO 1600, and your f-stop is anywhere from f5.6 and up, depending on, you know, and the f-stop controls your how much flash lighting is spilled, you know, the lighting that's spilled from the flash. You know, my shutter speed here controls the lighting from the windows, your outside light, and like I said, the f-stop controls the amount of light from the flash. So this one I'm quite happy with here. We do have a little clipping in the black, but nothing major because it's just down here, so I wouldn't do anything more with this photo. This living room, a little blown out in the windows. This picture was a bit askew, so you can't use that line. Use hard lines, you know, like the corner of the wall here, the door frame, the windows, to line up your picture. This one looks good to me. So all I'm going to do is lower my highlights. And that was a little too much. And I'll boost my shadows a touch to brighten up the furniture. A little clipping from the windows is not too bad, unless you want to get in there and start doing a lot of editing with dodging and burning, or taking a separate exposure to expose the windows correctly. It could be my eyes, but it does look like to me that I've got a little bit of a rotational issue here. And at a second look, I think I have a 0.3 degree. And yep, I did. Here we go. See, this line's even straighter, and now it doesn't have that tilt to the left. So that one's done. We'll go to this one here. This one looks really nice. Check the line quickly. The lines look good, but just a little blown out. Bring down that a bit, and that one's good. This kitchen, we had a lot of natural light coming from over here in the family room. A lot of natural light coming from the window, but if I exposed correctly for the windows, it was very dark overall. So you kind of have to compromise, and you get them as close as possible, and then the rest you can touch up here in post. I'm happy with the way this one, but I do have a little bit of rotation here, it looks like. Let's see, is it rotation? Yes, I'm going to go -0.. If you line up your photos, or you line up the rooms when you're taking the shot, I find, for me, the most of a rotational adjustment or vertical adjustment, you know, in rotation might be a 0.3 to 0.5 rotational adjustment. Vertical, I usually try to pay attention as much as possible to my verticals, so I rarely ever have to adjust my verticals. But as you saw in the earlier photo with the bathroom, I had to adjust that by 10. So this one looks good. We'll rate it a 5. Oops. And we'll move on to the next photo. Very bright windows again here. So we're going to lower our highlights. We can see, if you want to see more outside the windows, you're going to be dodging and burning and spending a bit more time in processing. But for what we're doing here today, oops, wrong way. Once again, for as much time that you spend in the house is approximately the time you're going to spend in post. So for us, we try to be in and out of a home, you know, in 20 to 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes you 40 minutes, but your processing should be about 20 to 30 minutes per home, depending on the size. This one here was just a basic bronze package, so we're going to be supplying a maximum of 20 photos. 18 is the minimum, and up to 4 Panoramix. For this home, we were able to get 3 Panoramix because the backyard still got a ton of snow in it. Now, with this photo, you can see over here in the kitchen things got a little darker. We had a ton of natural light coming in over here on the bookcase and the fireplace. No, that is not a real cat. So what I'm going to start with is I'll lower my highlights down. Not too much. We are getting a bit of shadow clipping, but that's probably in the fireplace. But we still want to brighten up that kitchen area. So we'll see what we can do to brighten it up without causing too much highlight clipping. And you know what? I'm quite happy with the way this one is. You know, the house looks like it's a little darker over here. So you want to try and make your photos look as realistic as possible. You don't want to brighten this area up too much. Once again, we're doing this for the buyers to look at. We're not doing this for a magazine. But we want to get as close to magazine quality without spending that much time. So this one we might even go, you know what, that looks pretty good. Let me try 0.5 here, or minus 0.5, and that looks even better. So done with this photo, and we're on to the next. So same thing, highlights, crank them down, get some of that window exposure back. This one's a little darker, but I'm very happy with the way this one turns out. Our lighting isn't too blown out. Check rotation once again. I know I say rotation a lot, but I think it's very, very important to make sure all of that is correct, as close as possible. Over here you can see a bit of distortion. You know, that's something we can't really control with a wide angle lens. You could zoom in a bit more. Actually, that's probably what I would do now that I look at the photo again. Zoom in to line up your right side of the frame with this cabinet here, and if possible, line up with this entertainment unit over here on the left side. So I'm happy with that one. I rated it a 5 to keep myself organized. You know, this one here, once again, just highlights very quickly. You know, we're kind of doing these quick and dirty because time is money. I don't want you guys spending too much time on your post-processing. You know, it does take time. When I first started, it took me 2 hours to shoot a home, to photograph a home, and probably just as long to process them, because I didn't, you know, it's a learning curve. You've got to learn, come up with your own system, and you're going to be constantly changing it as you learn different techniques. So don't be discouraged if your first home takes you, you know, forever and a day, which it feels like that to process. This one I'm not going to do too much here. I'm going to boost the shadows just a bit more here. Yeah. You know, I'd have a little bit of highlights out here, but that one's done. This one here got a lot of natural light coming in from all those windows, so we'll crank that down. But you notice how it darkened the rest of the photo, which actually, you know what, I'm liking this. This hot spot here on the fridge, once again, you can go in and start editing in Photoshop a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think you need to change it. You could also, when you're taking your photo, you could put your hand up on the side of the flash to block the reflection. But I'm quite happy with this photo. And I just want to check my rotation and my verticals. And that one looks good. So here we are. You see on the bottom here, these are my panels. We'll get to those in a moment. We're just going to go to the front photo here. A lot of backlight from the sun. According to the histogram, it's pretty good, but it's pretty dark here in the front. We want to brighten this up. I I can tell it's a little bit askew here, a little off. So I'll fix that first, and then what I'll do also, you can play with these presets from On1. They have one called Super Shadow Saver Light. Super Shadow Saver. Say that 3 times fast. So click that. It brightens up the shadows a bit here, so you know it's a bit better photo. It brought down the brightness here in the sky on the left top corner. I'm actually going to go in and boost the shadows just a bit more. Sometimes I'll even do on my exteriors, I'll boost it 0.3, the exposure, to brighten up the front, and we still don't have highlight clipping. So the photo looks a little brighter, and I think it shows better on MLS and realtor websites. So that one I'm done there. That's a 5. If you don't have these presets, I encourage you to get them for Lightroom. They're free, so and it takes no time at all. Here we go again. We're going to hit the Super Shadow Saver. I'm going to do a 0.3 exposure increase. So I don't have my highlights. Yes, my histogram is farther to the right, but we want that to be a bit brighter, and you can always adjust it down. There we go. Make sure you check, especially on the exterior photo, because people don't want to think there's a foundation. You don't want people thinking there's a foundation issue, and the house is tilted. So this one looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna rate it a 5. So the other reason I do my ratings is once I'm all done processing, if you got your panos in here, you got to kind of go through and select the photos you're going to keep. So what I do here is I just go filters, select by rated. So I got 22 photos here. I'm going to process them all. I'm going to export them all, and then I'll select the best 20 for my agent when I upload to the virtual tour. I have a little export preset here called processed, and what this does here, I'll show you, is when I go to my processed preset, it puts it in a subfolder of the original folder. So the original folder name was 10 Prospect, so it's going to put a processed folder inside of 10 Prospect. I just have all my files renamed to processed, and it does a sequential numbering after that. Actually, sorry, custom name and original file number. And then here, I limit my file size because on our OBO uploader, your maximum file size is 5 megabytes. I keep my JPEGs to 4 megabytes. It automatically resizes them as close to possible to 4 megabytes. So that's 4000K. I keep the quality at 100%, and my color space is ProPhoto RGB. I don't touch anything for the image resizing. All my metadata stays the same. No other watermarking. So, and then I'm just going to export these photos. So that's going to take care of those. We are going to go back to the unrated files, which will now be my Pano files. Now I'm using a program called Autopano Giga 2.6. There is a new version 3.0. Just haven't gotten that yet. So what I do here is, what I like about Autopano Giga is it has a Lightroom Export plugin. The only issue I found with the D800 was the resolution was too high, and my computer didn't like it. It couldn't, it ran out of memory. So what I do is I select all my, actually I'll go back to library here so you can see all my Pano files. So I select them all, I right click, I go to export, and I've actually once again made another preset, for my panos. This automatically resizes my photos for Autopano. So as you see, it's going to export to Autopano Giga. I put it in a subfolder called Panos. This way, all my photos, I like to keep them a little bit more organized. So I have folders for almost everything. I've kept the quality at 100%, but I've resized it down to 12 megapixels, so the resolution isn't too large for Autopano. You can depending on the camera you're using, you know, if you're using a 20 megapixel camera or less, you probably won't have to adjust the image sizing. I do that because of the file size on the D800. So we're going to click Export. So now we're going to go into editing the Panoramix. What I do here is I'm just going to bring Autopano over here. You're about to see it. You can see all the pano files have been brought in here. The first thing I do with the Nikon lens, the 14-24, when you shoot at 14, it recognizes it as a fisheye for some reason. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do first here is I go to the image properties. And I'll just bring this over here. And I'm going to switch this to standard. And click OK. Now I'm going to click detect. Sometimes when you have all your panos in here, it has a little issue with detecting. We're going to see how it does right now. Detecting all the images. So it's going to go through. So I find Autopano is quick. You can do multiple panoramics at the same time. So here we go. Looks like the first one looks pretty good here. We got the kitchen one. Looks really good. Now let's see if the family room came out really nicely. So you can preview them here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit each of them separately. So we click the Edit tab here. Sorry, it's over on my other display. I'll bring it over here. Put this in full screen. You want to make sure, depending on the version of Autopano you're using, this might look slightly different, but the first thing you want to do here is make sure it's in spherical projection. So you can click and make sure it's in spherical. It has to be in spherical so it works in the, so it stitches correctly when it goes into the 360 software for OBO. My stitching quality is a 2.39, which is a green flag, which is good. You just view the image, make sure everything looks good. There's no stitching errors. The panos basically, I don't do any extra editing after Autopano. You know, if I notice some really blown out sections, I might bring it back into Photoshop or Lightroom and touch it up a little bit. But for the most part, it's a moving photo. It doesn't need to be perfect. The next thing you do in Autopano here, it also has an ability to adjust all the lighting. I'll take a look at it disabled, see if I like it better, and actually in this one I do. The exposures look a little bit more balanced, so I'll disable that. If it's also too bright, you can go in and do a levels adjustment. The only one I really play with is the gamma. I might reduce the gamma of the overall picture, but for this one I'm happy. Next thing, you go up here to crop. It crops the image for you automatically. You click OK, and then you close the window. Done. Very, very simple. You know, it works out really well. You have to be using a panoramic head for this, something that centers the no parallax point. If you're not using something like that, you're going to get significant stitching errors, and it's just going to make it very frustrating for you. We'll go into this next one here. We'll edit this. I still got a 2.59 stitching quality. It's on spherical. I'm going to crop it. I'm going to do a little test here to disable this. It brightens things up a little too much for me. So I'll darken it down and done. Last one. Even better stitching quality. See, this one's a little bright, but I'm going to crop it. I'm going to turn that, oops. Turn this off, and it balances things a little bit better for me over here. Happy with this one. I'll close this, and that's it for my panos. As long as you don't have any major stitching errors, like I said, sometimes Autopano has a bit of difficulty finding control points. You might need another stitching software. If you're using a PC, I've downloaded a free software called Microsoft Image Composite Editor, so Microsoft ICE. It's free, but all it does is stitching. That's it. So if you do have some exposure issues, you might have to bring it back into Photoshop and touch things up a little. Lastly, I'm going to go down to this little gear here, and this is where I render. You want to make sure your height's anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500. So you'll go in and adjust that if you need to. I keep my quality at maximum at a 300 DPI. This is where you're gonna. I've done my file name as Pano. That way you don't have a big long file name, and it's just a little bit more organized. So you're gonna go in here, select your folder, 10 prospect. I've processed my stills in a processed folder. So I'm going to go in here, click that, so my panel goes in there, and you hit render. The next one will come up, you do the same thing. And for the last one, 10 prospect, processed, and we are done. So you're going to see here, there's a little window that shows them all being blended together and rendered. And once they're all rendered, you can go into your OBO Express post and start posting them to the virtual tour. So that's how my typical editing of a property. I hope this video is helpful, and if you have any questions, you can always email me at mukesh.barmeda@oboteam.com. That's spelled mukesh.barmeda@obeoteam.com. Thanks very much. I'm Mukesh, OBO photographer from Manitoba. Thank you.